Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Batman Eternal. Previously, Harper Row made her first foray with a more elaborate crime-fighting outfit, defeating Mad Hatter and freeing Batgirl, Red Robin, Red Hood, and the nano-infected kids he had building a machine to make people love him. Meanwhile, Stephanie wakes up in her home, finding out her mom hired an assassin to retrieve her. And we're just supposed to forget about how Crystal was an accessory to Cluemaster's schemes. The reunion is short-lived, however, when Selina Kyle makes a late-night visit, knocking Stephanie unconscious.
Issue 43, James Tynion IV scripting, opens to Batman discussing living arrangements of someone that'll be safer with Harper Row since they have no connection to each other. In exchange, Harper, now codenamed Bluebird, wants proper training.
Tim's great at the tech stuff, but so am I. I want to know the cool stuff.
Wait. So what was that off-screen training you got from Tim that was only ever talked about? Was it fighting or was it tech? Also, under what circumstances did you learn his real name?
One thing she wants to learn is how to knock someone's eyeballs out with one chop.
You can live without eyeballs. I'm not a monster.
Well, maybe you're a sociopath, but anyway, Batman says if she keeps her safe and finds out what she knows, he'll think about it. So we jump ahead in time to Cullen making friends with an unmasked spoiler, while a video game no one is playing shows on the TV. He asks if she watches a show called Gotham Heights, and they each reveal that they've missed a few episodes due to extraordinary circumstances. Harper snarks that Stephanie isn't the only one that's had it rough, and doesn't have the monopoly on sob stories. Steph says she never thought that she did, and Harper asks why she isn't talking after they saved her life, and there's the part where they really disagree. Steph says she doesn't know what made Bluebird want to associate with that maniac, and it's insinuated that she's talking about Batman. Cullen tries to ease the situation, but Spoiler says they're blind to what
he's turned the city into.
Harper wonders if she'd preferred staying where they found her, and demands to know what she's hiding. Jump back 6 hours, and Stephanie finds herself tied to a chair, in her costume, and startled by Selina's cat, Isis. Another Batman TAS character making the transition to comics. Catwoman sets her back upright, saying she's at the Egyptian, while noting that 60 illegal casinos had to shut down because Selina robbed them out of business. Yet none of the high rollers are as valuable as Spoiler, whose bounty just doubled to 200 mil, and might double again by day's end. This means Steph knows something nobody should, who's behind Gotham's woes, and Selina insists on knowing everything, or she'll give Stephanie up, looking creepily gleeful at such a prospect.
Wine?
Why do people keep changing her clothes while she's unconscious? It's really creepy.
Elsewhere, Harper is exceptionally clingy to her brother as they visit his favorite shop for legally obtaining rare import items. He peeks into her backpack with her Bluebird gear, and she chastises him for not being more careful with her secret identity. Says the girl who spent time crime fighting while showing off her face, and now displays her unique hair and piercings. Red Robin shows up in civvies, saying they need to talk. They arrive at her apartment, Tim in costume, noting that she has a setup but still uses his base, and there's an insinuation she may have stolen some of his bulletproof fabrics for her costume. He brings up the blog Spoiler Alert, and holo-projects its author, saying she's been operating about the same time as everything started, and has a large bounty on her head.
Spring Valley? She's a suburb girl.
No dialogue is indicating where Stephanie's from, and I don't see anything on the panel that could mean that Harper is reading it off something. So how does she know? Is this supposed to be some kind of writer-granted omniscience for Harper? Not that I'd be that surprised.
Red R brings up her dad, Cluemaster, while projecting some pictures off social media.
She's duck-facing.
Something else to blame on this stupid reboot. They know she's being held at Catwoman's underground casino, but they don't know where that is, or have the time to track it down. So, it's a different place from where she called Batman with a personal bat signal? And how do you know for sure that Spoiler is at the Egyptian at all? Selina apparently has a Wayne Tech XR2600 body scanner that can detect Batman and his associates. However that works, I imagine such a device would need the programming to differentiate such size, so one wonders how Selina would manage that, let alone what would happen if a non-ally with a similar body type just happened to stroll through. So Harper is tasked with getting in, no costume, and setting off a signal that will summon Batman. She gets annoyed that she's getting the assignment secondhand, like Batman still doesn't trust her, but begrudgingly goes along anyway.
Wow. Not being trusted by a guy famous for not trusting people. You poor special little thing.
Back at the Egyptian, Selina marvels about the patronage they've gained through word of mouth only after a couple of weeks in business. She finds it too easy, preferring a game, which Spoiler seems familiar with. She's been giving cryptic clues about big plans on her site and ducking out of harm's way at the last moment. We actually haven't seen a lot of the posts they've been talking about, not for some time in fact. Not much context to work with, though maybe more than in other tell rather than show instances this book is prone to. But if she's being cryptic and leaving clues, that really doesn't make her the spoiler, does it? Did any of the writers read about this character before the reboot? Anyway, Selina insists that daddy issues are making Steph play the game Cluemaster's way, that she's not trying to stop him, but protect and prove something to him. Sure, Gotham cops aren't really an option since we know some of them, including Bard, were manipulated and on the take in some fashion, but she could have told the state police that locked her dad up, or the FBI, the CIA, Argus, or the man she's already had a couple run-ins with, who would need the information she has more than anyone. Why are you so afraid of the Batman?
And so a reinvention that started off well enough, though still completely unnecessary, has fully succumbed to the New 52 stupidity. Spoiler became Spoiler not to stop her criminal father, but for the sake of daddy issues, while letting people die and a city burn. Stephanie was by no means perfect before the reboot, but this is a whole nother level of what are you thinking? And this is from people who claim to love the character.
When Selina is informed that an outdated entry code was used to gain access to her club, she knows that Batman is on his way. Steph insists that she can't let Batman take her, but is told by Selina that she has no idea what to do with all the cards that she's holding. Despite her accomplishments, she's not invulnerable, and to protect someone that left her homeless and alone, she's going to die. Miss Kyle also makes a point to insult Stephanie for wearing a silly costume, despite being a grown woman that frequently goes out dressed like a cat. Two goons are then instructed to drag Stephanie to the safe, and we jump to a short time later, and a more succinct version of the events in Batman number 28. Bluebird flips off a zip line she was sliding upside down from onto a balcony, but loses her balance, not having much acrobatic experience. But enough to do a flip, probably from that training we never saw, we have to assume. For no reason, a goon grabs the strap of a rifle, making him the worst villain of all for preventing her from going splat. She stuns him, letting go as she floats. Then she's on the ground with Batman like nothing happened. Wonderful sequencing there, guys. They knock around a few more goons, and Harper pats herself on the back before Selina calls them off to let the Bat have his say. Before long, they're in the safe, talking about Spoiler's fate, which is up to her. She can go with bats and inevitably talk, or she dies back out on the streets of Gotham. Steph begs to stay with Selina, but that's not an option, what with the underworld thinking she's at the casino. Keeping the safe guarded, but empty, will leave no one the wiser. Steph says she can't make her go, but Selina asks what in the last day makes the girl think Catwoman can't make her do whatever she wants.
The fact that you pretty much pulled a Hannibal Lecter impression on a terrible character reinvention and didn't actually influence her to reveal what she knows.
Spoiler tells Batman she won't be forced to talk, but he seems pretty cool with it. Fact is, there are a bunch of assassins out for her, she's malnourished, and anything else will come in time. Harper starts mouthing off, and Bats appropriately tells her to be quiet. Steph finally acquiesces, is untied, and leaves with Batman and Bluebird. Later, at the Row apartment, Harper comes off as antagonistic, saying she doesn't want to fight but really wants to fight because of weird people she doesn't know on her couch, but then asks Steph why she's scared. Spoiler responds that Catwoman was right, that even though her dad tried to kill her and called her a disappointment, she wanted to prove she could play on the same level as him. Then they talk about how cool Catwoman is with her buttonless suit. I don't know why that's supposed to be impressive. Harper notes that if they shared a school, they probably wouldn't get along, but Steph can trust her, and particularly Batman, to do the right thing. Stephanie says she can't, because the man she saw telling Cluemaster what to do was the same man that funds Batman. Bruce Wayne.
See, this is what I'm talking about with the Flashpoint reboots getting out of hand. But seriously though, wouldn't Steph be a little suspicious about Bats being in on this whole city-destroying conspiracy when in issue 24 she heard Hush tell Cluemaster to kill her before she could reach Batman? This feels like a pretty glaring contradiction.
Ray Fox scripted issue 44 opens to Gotham Central, filled to the brim with former Arkham residents. Captain Maggie Sawyer is told of inmates such as Ten-Eyed Man, Maxie Zeus, and Magpie, each saying that the man they're looking for, who tore Arkham apart, is one Professor Achilles Milo. Batman has Penny 2 scrounge up some info for him. On top of being a pharmacist at Arkham, he taught chemistry at Gotham Academy. Between agents in the field and what few satellites they have access to, they're intent on finding him. Hey, Vigo Station. Well, it was magic and ghost stuff going on, so maybe? Anyway, a brief visit to Luke Fox's apartment, where its tenant is wiring some spare nth metal to his glove, which Batman gave him once he asked, and Luke announces his actions out loud to the ghosts plaguing him. Just as we're about to see some Bat-style ghost busting, we jump to the Row apartment, where Harper is stopping Spoiler from leaving. Even with a bounty on her head, she can't stay with people associated with the Bat, who aren't going after their benefactor while he tears the city apart. Harper holds her at taser point. They fight a little as Spoiler claims to tell the world how insane Bruce Wayne is, but this book has established she'll write a vague blog about it that will be talked about once, if that. Harper gets the upper hand and her taser closes in on Spoiler, which is where we leave that scene, off to Gotham International Airport. Milo is just in time for the flight to Caracas, only to be recognized by security. Soon surrounded, he reaches into his bag and suddenly gas begins spreading, causing hysteria to those breathing it in.
Where is your TSA now?
Batman crashes onto the scene, with a handy breather to protect him from the gas he hears other people succumb to. Milo attempts to use a needle on him, only to be punched, hooked, and zipped upwards. While the professor hangs out, Batman sets out to incapacitate his hallucinating victims. Well, he punches one, and in the next panel a bunch of them are restrained. Because I'm Batman, indeed. Then he takes out a hallucinating cop, while Milo watches. Expecting the police to stop Batman. I should have known better. Yeah, man, what kind of teacher are you? Milo unlatches himself, falls for a while, and then runs to the tarmac, oddly enough not hobbling given that height, where he needles one of the workers that tries to stop him. Just as he celebrates his supposed evasion of the Dark Knight, the Batplane hovers above him, Gatling guns at the ready. Again, a lot of guns for the guy who doesn't like them. Or are we just supposed to assume the whole Dark Knight Returns rubber bullets honest shtick? Anyway, Batman tells him to surrender or be neutralized. But given some of the targeting we see...
You said neutralized, not neutered, right? Right?
Either way, Milo chooses surrender. The plane detects various drugs still on his person, and Bat's voice commands it to strategically destroy them, thus leaving him free for interrogation. Though how they're destroyed isn't really specified. Guns are aimed at him, but Bats tells the plane to cook them. So maybe some kind of heat weapon that's causing them to explode. But again, it's a little ambiguous. Milo says someone gave him a book with dark enchantments that transformed Arkham in ways he didn't understand. He also got an invitation, like other villains, mentioned something about the world beneath, and then we get a splash page of spectral arms reaching for Batman, telling him his time has come.
Do you know who you're talking to? I mean, this would be much more threatening if this guy didn't hear it at least 4 times a week. In fact, I wouldn't be at all surprised if Batman records his villains saying that over and over again and takes the most unintentionally funny one and makes it his ringtone.
Bringing us to issue 45, Fox still scripting, which sees less luminescent ghosts calling for Batman, telling him he can fight enemies, but not the truth. A third ghost-looking fellow seems to be more confused, as would appear to be ghosts of Bruce's parents, note how well-dressed they are, chastise their son on what he's done, but Bats isn't buying it, as the ghosts of Arkham torment their tormentor Milo, who seems to be having heart problems. The confused not ghost, Martin Ware, says they should all go after Achilles for making him the way he is. Batman grabs him, telling him to stop, but Martin, or Mr. Bygone, as he mentions pretty awkwardly, claims he can't control what's happening. Bats says he's lying, so he subjects him to a lie detector test, by which I mean his fist, knocking out Bygone Marty whoever, thus ending the haunting experience. Milo seems to be going into cardiac arrest, or at least some heart-related problem that the Caped Crusader intends to solve with a miniature defibrillator from his utility belt. He ignores warnings from the approaching airport police to back off as he tries to save Milo's life. We jump to Luke Fox's apartment, which is suffering from bleeding walls, furniture tornadoes, and more ghosts. Note that his helmet is the only piece of armor he's not wearing. After a lampshade hanging poltergeist references, Luke fights back with what little nth metal he has, sadly not mentioning that bustin' makes him feel good. While he gets smacked in the face by a flying book, his fight is intercut with Batman defibrillating Milo and using a flashbang on a splash page to disorient the cops and make an escape. Looks like Luke finally learned his lesson, because now he's suddenly helmeted as he dispatches the last ghost. And Jim Corrigan arrives. When Wing states the obvious that his short-term partner is alive, Corrigan apologizes for having blacked out when Arkham fell.
Well, it did look like you got crushed by a huge stone block, so I figured that would count as an acceptable excuse.
Corrigan goes on that he wouldn't have left Luke behind, it's just that the Spectre doesn't give him any control. Batwing replies that he learned that whether it makes sense or not, the supernatural exists, and not just syndicated on TNT. Opening his mask, he's curious if those the Spectre judged deserved it, as those haunting him for days, leaving him sleepless, have been talking about being left wanting in their judgment. Corrigan says the two of them can talk about it, he lives with this sort of thing daily, when Batman gives the detective a ring. And for some reason the nutty villain in his custody isn't even buckled up, much less restrained in any way, given that Batman has to have his back turned to him the entire flight. Bats wants to know more about this alleged book responsible for the troubles at Arkham. They set up a meeting on hallowed ground, so maybe they're preparing to avoid a Highlander fight? And we jump to Gotham Cemetery, instead of another subplot. Color me surprised. Bats, Man, and Wing discuss Arkham, how Luke will never forget what he saw, and Bats feeling sorry that he sent him, but it was Luke's decision in the end, while Milo and Corrigan chatted up in the background, ending in a right hook. But Jim only punched him because the guy was attempting a verbal summoning, so it's okay, though I bet right now Achilles sure feels like a heel. The book was actually a combination of instructions given via dreams in a sort of symbol-based language. It was a trap to make way for Blackfire's plans to unleash hell, and the pain he unleashed on the inmates acted as fuel. Milo was just a sucker that wanted to feel important, as signified by the involvement of a dream bird, which makes Batman wonder. In general, I guess. The Prof's uninitiated mind shouldn't have had access to the kind of magic he was dealing in. So the question is, who provided it for him?
Honestly, while I have absolutely nothing against Jim Corrigan or Luke Fox, this whole magic subplot doesn't feel very necessary to the overall story. You take it all out, find another means of destroying Arkham, I don't think you really miss much. And You would think that the story, and thus this review, would be much shorter for it.
At the Rose domicile, Spoiler and Bluebird, both maskless, are sitting across from each other, and no, we don't really get any further context on how their earlier struggle went. Shame on you for thinking we would. Spoiler says no one's in charge and that everyone, from her dad to Falcone, Hush, and Mad Hatter, are all pawns. She makes a remark that Batman created them all, that without him there'd be no Clue Master, she'd still have a life, and it made it easier for Bruce Wayne to pull strings. Which kind of contradicts the whole nobody in charge statement when you think about it. She pulls off a glove while boasting that everything she knows would take a week to explain, when Harper notices the smoke capsule between her fingers. However, a suburban girl on the run got that. Stephanie is sly, but of course Harper Row has to be slyer. Harper threatens her with a stun rifle, and she rebuts that Steph is wrong, that it doesn't matter if Batman made the bad guys or if their childhoods were rough, because good people are going to be killed regardless. She unveils a tripod from her sleeve, secures her rifle to it, still aimed at Steph, and says that Batman, his allies, herself, and hopefully Spoiler, will save those good people. Steph says it isn't that simple, and still doesn't trust any of them. Harper puts her mask on, saying that her gun will track and stun her if she moves more than an inch in any direction, and anyone else that might show up, because that's exactly the kind of thing a poor girl from the ghetto would be able to whip up. She's such a great hacker, after all. Bluebird is going to see Batman, and about getting Steph safely out of Gotham. Despite being a selfish jerk and having daddy issues, all New 52 intensified stupidity I might add, Harper still thinks she's pretty cool for some unknown and never to be elaborated upon reason, and doesn't want her to die. Left alone, Stephanie begins feeling this is pretty awkward.
First off, Falcone was already a gangster long before Bruce put on the ears. Second, Steph stated herself that Clue Master became a criminal because less intelligent people, according to him, were thriving while his family struggled. Maybe you could say that Batman's theatricality influenced his theatricality, but that's not really the same thing. The whole Batman created his rogues argument has been done before, done better, and it feels more like a throwaway remark to further decline Stephanie's character. Why? Apparently, it's the only way to make Harper Row look better by comparison. She doesn't rise up. Another character is simply torn down to give the illusion of Row ascending as a character. It happened to Tim Drake constantly being shown up by her, and now the terrible reinvention of Stephanie Brown is facing it. This is just awful writing.
Moving on to the Batcave because there are only so many hours in the day. Bruce is telling Julia that the way Wayne Enterprises was divided up was done with unnecessary complication, kind of like a signature. I keep thinking of the Court of Owls, but this isn't their style. Yeah, they usually just leave flaming bags of pellets on the front porch. Julia suggests that he rests, and she stops the obvious, "You sound like your father" remark. They have a short exchange about taking after Alfred before returning to the investigation. Julia doesn't see a connection, but Bruce notices something about the separate holding companies that made the purchases. All the names are references to mythic demons, a pattern Bruce has seen before, from someone that claimed to steer clear of the Dark Knight. Instead of flat out telling Julia who it is when she asks, he asks a series of questions that make Edward Nygma blush. Like, who would be devious and rich enough to semi-legally buy bits of his company, operates unseen but puts a demonic clue in plain sight? Who can bring a city to its knees, have influence over people from all walks of life? Who can take the sunrise, sprinkle it with dew, cover it in chocolate and a miracle or two? That's right, Ra's al Ghul. The comic closes on him, apparently just lounging around while his ninjas just stand there.
Those minions could probably be doing stuff. If not assassinations, maybe scrubbing floors or weeding the garden. Just saying. That does it for this episode, so tune in next time as the Caped Crusader closes in on whom could be the mastermind devastating Gotham. Or is it the other way around? Is Gotham masterminding the Caped Devastation's crusade? Wait a minute.